Two companies have donated about 50 body cameras to the police department in Ferguson, Missouri, still reeling from the shooting death of unarmed black teenager Michael Brown. Let's get more now with law enforcement analyst Tom Fuentes. Also, he is a former FBI assistant director. And as well, Democratic Missouri State Senator Maria Chappelle Nadal. And also, let's bring in CNN political commentator Marc Lamont Hill. Tom, just first, give us a sense of how these body cameras work and how common these are.
Well, they're not real common, Brianna, but they're becoming so. And I think it's very similar to the dashboard cameras in police cars. And originally, when these devices were being proposed for law enforcement, a lot of uniformed police officers thought, we don't want this. We don't want people watching every move we make and misconstruing it and all of that. And now they're starting to realize, I think, gradually, that there's been a tipping point to where they want people to see what they go through, and that they would like their communities to know that it is just about an impossible job. And it's not just the minority communities or African American, Hispanic, or Asian. A uniformed officer on the cop, I did it 6.5 years before I was in the Bureau. You just can't believe how big of a jerk, and I'm, family audience here, some people can be, and I don't care if they're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or if they're from a lower economic group. When they're on the street and when they're drunk and high or whatever it might be, they can be almost impossible to reason with. They can become violent for no reason, all these bad things. And these dash cams have started to show what the officer dealt with at the time, at the point of arrest on the street. Because come court date, 60 days later, that person's there in their shiny new beautiful suit and tie, the pillar of the community, and everything else, and the officer says, I want you to see what we went through or I went through on the street. It's a different story, and the camera can help prove it.
I bet it can. And I wonder, Maria, if you also think that it helps with accountability. It's not just the perspective of the police officer, but it may be the perspective of the person in, say, Ferguson, Missouri, who is dealing with the police officer.
Well, absolutely. What I would have to tell you is that my constituents want to have full transparency. We do not want to be a part of a guessing game. So as your last speaker said, it's good for the officers who are having to deal with individuals who have some issues, but it's also good for the community that has complete unrest because they feel as though they have been in many times either abused or harassed. And so I think it's good for both parts to have this kind of video and audio on every single officer.
What's the mood like in Ferguson right now?
Well, I have to tell you, I've been on the streets today protesting, and there was a wonderful person who came out to barbecue, and we're just planning for the future. I brought 2 of my staff members from Jefferson City, and we're about to do some really aggressive constituency services. There are a lot of issues that are coming to bear, and we have to address those issues. So we are moving forward. We are trying to empower young people, which is the most important thing right now, as we are trying to create a calm and prepare ourselves for a grand jury.
And Marc, obviously, the farther away we get from the death of Michael Brown, you start to really look forward and think about not just Ferguson, but other communities and what needs to be done to overcome this real disconnect that we're seeing. I want to talk about over the weekend, we saw an op-ed from Nicholas Kristof. It highlighted some really staggering figures about some of the economic disparities between whites and blacks in the country. He noted that the U.S. currently has a larger wealth gap by race than South Africa during apartheid. What do you make of that? And can the events of Ferguson somehow, help people kind of coalesce and try to deal with this?
No, well, it's an interesting statistic, and there are other statistics we could draw between apartheid South Africa and the United States, for example, mass incarceration numbers as well per capita. And so when you look at these numbers, you realize that Ferguson is not just an isolated incident and not just a tragic shooting, but it really is a window into urban America and the gross forms of social inequality that we see everywhere. When you talk about poor police-community relationships, when you talk about lack of employment opportunities, when you talk about a gap in power, right, and an imbalance in power and overrepresentation of one group over another in the mayoralty and in the city council and so forth. poor schools, lack of access to housing, education, healthcare. All of those things are in Ferguson, but they're also around the country. So when people say, I am Michael Brown, they're not just talking about the condition of being young and black and outside, which is also dangerous, but they're talking about the social circumstances that produce this. And so moving forward, I'm excited to see dashboard cameras, for example. I'm excited to see body cameras because it changes the relationship. It holds police accountable in a different way. But I also want to see voter registration drives. I also want to see cop watch programs. I want to see employment possibilities. I want to see cities begin to reinvest in the urban areas and not incentivize people to leave. And Ferguson was a response or an outgrowth of white flight. I'd like to see all that stuff. So Ferguson is a site of possibility.
All right. It certainly is, and the beginning of a conversation that needs to happen. Marc, thank you so much. Maria, really appreciate you being with us. Tom, thank you to you as well.
Pleasure.
And just ahead, her